Hi everyone, welcome to
Hello,
the
everyone.
show.
I'm
Welcome,
Ken Copeland.
and I'm Max Barres. Welcome to SI Live. We're streaming on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Australian time, Melbourne, and New Zealand time it's
It's 11 p.m.
11 p.m. Excellent. We have another show today. Today we're going to be talking about goal processing. This is following on quite a good discussions on intelligence and the fundamentals of what makes things intelligent. And now we're getting to a bit more of a meaty conversations, and we're trying to really work on trying to bring some concepts to the table, right? And trying to say, hey, let's explore some of the things more in detail. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe and press the little notify button so you can get to hear our shows. Is it does that work these days, or do we do reverse psychology? Does that still work? Don't click it. Is that how? What is this people say these days? Don't click the button.
Well, the reverse psychology only works when people don't know that you're doing reverse psychology, but now
Ah,
they know you're doing it. So if we do the actual psychology, then that's the reverse of the reverse.
yeah, like
So go ahead and push that button, and yeah, I think that
no.
should work.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks, Ken. That's good. That's good. All right. So, before we get into it, obviously we have Christmas coming up, so we're going to be taking a break from about the 20th. I think the last show will be on the 20th of December, and then we will
Yeah.
be back about 3 to 4 weeks after that, right? So, and I recommend everybody else have a great time with your families. I'm coming up to it, and it's going to be pretty busy, pretty hectic next few weeks, which is going to be awesome. Also, November is happening, so I'm still growing this beard and slash mustache. I'll have to chisel it out a little bit more this week to try to get some money, because obviously we're already 20th, right? 22nd. Wow, look at the month has gone already. Right.
Yeah.
So good. Any other points to mention? No, I think all
Oh,
good.
a couple. Just that we're going to have like several more shows between now and the 20th, right? So, and we got some exciting stuff to say during that. And we also want to mention that, in January we're going to have the 100-year anniversary for the word robot. So, we
Yes.
don't want to forget that that's going to be coming up.
Yep. That's going to be amazing. Can't wait for that to happen. That's going to be great. I think it's going to be amazing to celebrate such a good milestone. 100 years, right? How often 100-year things come around?
How do you celebrate the anniversary of a word like robot? Like, do we all do the robot dance or
That's what I
something
was
like
just
that?
thinking. We do
Yeah,
all the
we
robot
do that.
dance, yeah, or some robot dance. Maybe you dress up as a robot, put some cardboard boxes, or actually, what did
Yeah.
they do in the robot play? They cover themselves in silver or something. Maybe that's not good for your
Oh
health these
yeah,
days.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
we can watch an episode of Star Trek Next Generation with Data. That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Or we can dress as what was that Teen Man in Alice in Wonderland? He must have been a robot. He was metal, right? He had
Yes,
a little
yes.
cap thing. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we'll have to come up with some nice costume design for this celebration. Maybe we can do a little scene set up as well. Awesome. That's great. Well, I'm
Okay.
looking forward to that. I think it's going to be great, great show too, and it'll be a good year as well, I think. So let's talk a little bit more about our current show today, right? So goal processing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
we've broken this down in two phases, right? We're gonna talk about a little bit of a high level discussion first, just to introduce the topic. Then we're gonna have a little presentation, which will go through and just talk about some of our little concept to be able to demonstrate the goal processing, and then we'll talk about some of the real life things and the end game for goal processing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
talk about setting goals, right?
Well, let me just give a little overview about goals first,
Yep.
because we've sort of touched on it a little bit in our previous shows, but I just wanted to reiterate that being goal driven is really fundamental to intelligence, because goal drivenness allows you to move in, according to a set of wants and desires. And this is something that we see with ourselves and with other animals and creatures, that they seem to get it in their mind that they want to achieve something, and then they pursue that
Hmm.
in order to achieve it. So this, I think, more than anything, this is a sign of intelligence, is when something can pursue goals, and especially if it can set those goals. So imagine like a lander going to Mars, and if it could actually set the goals for exploring the planet.
Hmm.
Once it gets there, it looks to see what's there, and it maybe looks and says, "Oh, that mountain over there looks interesting. I want to go explore that." And so it then figures out how to do that and goes over there and does it. And as it encounters things along the way, like if it runs into a rock, then it sets a goal to go around the rock, and so then it actually does so. Okay, and that's the thing to understand about goals, is that when you hear people say that intelligence systems are predictive and that they make predictions, that actually what they're referring to is a goal-driven system. Because in a goal-driven system, you need to kind of have an idea about how to achieve the goal, or how to find out how to achieve the goal. And having the goal in your mind is actually the prediction that you're making. It's like, I want to achieve that. Okay. And so that's the prediction. Like if you're going to open the door, the goal is to open the door, and you want to see the door open. That's the intended thing that you want to see happen. So now, a lot of times people challenge when I make the comment that everything we do is goal driven. And it's very easy to see that we are goal driven if we remember to ask the question why we're doing anything. Okay. Yeah. Why we're doing anything. Like the fact that we're doing this show is in keeping with some goals. Okay. And those goals are in keeping with goals, because one of the things that we'll illustrate here is that goals are hierarchical, and that you have top level goals that are very high level. And then you have another level of goals underneath, and you have another level of goals underneath them. And each of those lower level goals are to achieve the next level up. And it keeps going up until you hopefully one day achieve your main goal. And so anyways, that kind of is a big topic. And it dovetails with the whole topic of emotions, which we did 2 separate shows on emotions. Yep. Okay. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about it, but in the context of goals, where we actually break down an actual goal processing example. Yeah. So, awesome. Okay. So that's, do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to add?
I think you're spot on there. I suppose once we get into our real life, the emotions and how they influence goals, basically on the fly, where systems have to be able to change based on emotions. That's how we as humans do, right? So, yeah, I totally agree. Let's just get into the presentation. We'll just show that, yeah, and we'll continue discussion. Yeah, do you want to share your presentation?
Yeah. Let me kind of set the stage for it. Yep. Okay. Is what we'll do first is we'll present a general overview of how goal processing works in a very high level. We're not going to get into any code or anything of this sort. Okay. I'm sure some people might like that, but other people won't. So
mine exclude, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and we're going to talk about what kinds of things the system manages when it's looking at managing a set of goals. And then we'll look at an actual example that'll be very, very simplified. But the simplified example can be generalized and applied to any set of goals.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess what we'll do is we'll bring up the slides now.
Yep. Awesome. Let's do that.
Okay. So I will share my slides. Here we go. And there we go.
Excellent.
Okay. So the first slide that I'll address is the overview of goal pursuit. Okay. Now, if we look at the green oval, we'll see that this is saying goal selection. Now, goal selection is really the way that the system keeps track of what goals it is in the process of pursuing. And it's important to remember that human beings and artificial or synthetic intelligence systems generally have to be able to pursue goals over a long course of time. Some might take years to achieve. Some might take months or weeks or days or hours. Some may be immediate. Okay. But generally the high level goals are long term, to where they will occur over a long period of time. So in this case, what we mean by goal selection is that at any given moment, the system is pursuing some goal at some level, right? And generally at the very lowest level, that's going to translate into actions that the system does. So, for example, we had a goal today to do this show, all right? Then there are sub-level goals that were, one of them was get ready for the show. And I actually had to produce these slides. So that was another sub-goal that had to be followed through. And it took about an hour to do. So there was a whole series of goals that were being pursued in order to achieve that, right? And then once that's done, then that can be ticked off as a sub-goal that was fulfilled. And then as we are, going through the show, now we are pursuing the goal of accomplishing the show. At some point, the show will be done, and then that goal will be done. So everything that we're doing here is all in keeping with things that we had in our mind that we needed to do in order to achieve this goal of doing a show on goal pursuit, right? And so what I'm trying to do is to show that at this moment, right now, I'm pursuing a goal of presenting this slideshow, right? And so I'm stepping through each symbol. My brain is actually going through a kind of a checklist of things to cover. So as I jump now to the next bubble of actions, I've now changed my goal. My goal was to present the green bubble. Now my goal is to present the blue bubble. Okay, so now I'm going to do that. And you can see how my brain is pursuing these goals as we're presenting the information. Okay, so keep that in mind as we look through this. So now we have actions, and actions cause reactions. And when we have reactions, we then can analyze those reactions to see if the actions we're doing are leading us to the goal or away from the goal that we have chosen to do. Okay, that's the purpose of the analysis. Are we getting closer or are we getting further away? And the emotions are there in order to inform us as to whether we are getting closer or further away, because we would really have no other way of knowing that, okay, other than the emotion gives us a feeling. And in the case of goals of achievement, which this is, okay, there are several things, and I'm just going to talk right off of my mind right now, okay, as far as what I'm thinking, in order to illustrate the point, is that I am wanting to get through explaining this entire diagram. So that's a goal of achievement that I have. A goal of avoidance that I have in my mind right now is that I don't want to forget what I'm wanting to say, and I want to have a flow of saying the information, right? So these are all of the goals that I have in my mind at this very moment. If I were to forget what I'm going to say, let's say I get distracted and something happens over there and it distracts me, and then I come back and I'm like, oh, what was I saying? Okay, that would create a slight bit of panic and maybe a little bit of fear that, uh-oh, am I going to be able to get back on track? I think anybody who's spoken in front of a group knows what this feeling is, where you're like worried that you might forget your lines if you're in a play, or if you're giving a speech, that you might lose your place, right? These are kind of little fears that develop. These are things we want to avoid. And if it happens, it creates this feeling of, uh-oh, right? So that's where emotions come in. Emotions are helping to guide us to kind of know what we need to do. Do we need to keep on the same goal, or do we need to switch now to a different track, to switch off to a different goal? Like you'll see a lot of times on television, a person will lose their place and then they'll say, well, now we're going to go to a commercial break. Yeah. Why did they do that? Because in their ear, the guy who's watching the show, he has a goal of keeping the ball rolling, and he sees that the person's in trouble. So he tells them, we're going to go to a break so that the other person can get their composure and get back on track. Right. So this shows you how then the emotions affect the goal selection, and then it keeps going around in a circle. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so, do you have any questions, Max? I mean,
I think this is great. I'll ask the question after when we talk about more real life. You know, one of the things I'm always interested in is boredom, right? Because, you know, if you look at kids, right, when they're bored, they just have any goals. They have a son, right? And whenever he seems to be bored, he's just walking around. You're like, I'm going to just go, what about you try this? And he's like, oh, I have a new goal. And where he goes. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And boredom is actually an emotion.
Yeah.
See, it's the emotion that triggers us to hunt for something to do, and to be curious. It's like when a person is curious and they're looking at something and kind of following what's interesting to them. The only reason they're doing that is because they have nothing else that's attracting their attention. They're not going to let curiosity, lead them astray if they're already pursuing a goal, right? Yeah. And in fact, they want no distractions, right? When they're doing that. So yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Love it.
Okay, so now I think we can move on to the next slide. Mm-hmm. So as we said, there's a goal hierarchy. And what this slide shows is that for a given goal, you can have multiple goal sets underneath. Okay? So you don't have just one way of skinning a cat, as they say. Okay? It's kind of a nasty analogy, skinning a cat. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so
we don't condone that, by the way.
We don't condone just going around skinning cats, but it's figurative speech. So okay, so here we have goal set number 1, set number 2, and set number 3. Now, under goal set number 1, there could be 5 or 6 goals. Okay, that can be done. Okay, in order to achieve that higher level goal. But what a goal set would be is, like, for example, if you had that high level goal of make money. Okay, this is the one I like to use. Make money. Okay, then you could have multiple goal sets. So one could be get a career. Another goal set could be get a job. Another goal set could be
dig some gold, go
prospecting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Another one could be, rob a bank. Okay. That probably has some downsides to it that one shouldn't do, especially if you're moral. Okay. Which I would highly advise.
Yeah.
Okay. But it is an option. It's just not a very good one. It's not a good one.
No.
Okay. But that's to illustrate a point that when you look at how to achieve a goal, you can have alternatives where some are better for different purposes, right? Like some people, they get into debt, for example. Let's say they are a gambler, and they go and they gamble, and they get into debt for $50,000, and it has to be paid tomorrow, and they don't have any way of getting the money. So somebody tells them to go see a loan shark. And even though they would never do this normally, they consider themselves in great trouble, right? And there's panic setting in, and there's fear because people are telling them, hey, you're going to get a pair of cement boots, type of thing. So,
yeah. So, one less leg. Oh, the kidneys.
Right. Yeah. You're going to find out what happens when your legs bend backwards. So So basically, they go to a situation and get the money quickly because it gives them an extra week or an extra month to pay it back or whatever, right? So yeah, okay. So this is to show that you have different goal sets, okay, underneath.
Yeah.
And then you see the green actions that are there. Now, what we mean by actions is we mean that these are things that you know you can do. These are like hard coded. Okay. So if you know, for example, that you have the goal to alleviate the itch on your face, okay, and the reason you're doing that is because you have a goal to avoid discomfort, right?
Yeah.
So basically you're going to avoid discomfort, and your face is itching, it's uncomfortable, so you do an action to fix it, and that is you scratch it like this. You know you can do that. There's no question as to whether you will be able to do that, right? So that's really where actions come in. And within a computer system, that would be equivalent to the actual operations that are done to achieve certain things, like open a file, save a file, find a file, those types of things. Send a message through a socket, okay, and things of this sort.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are, yes?
Well, and I was just thinking, because it's a very kind of like a small diagram, and I suppose, if you were to multiply this out, you can, if you look at them humans, right? Humans get sometimes confused in those goals, and they get, they get spiral out of control, like you were saying before, and that's why it can get a bit tricky, right? Because this has become, endless, or basically hierarchy of goals and goals and goals and goals and goals. Obviously in psychology, they try to deal and try to help people to sort really the goal hierarchy, to make sure the goal hierarchy aligns, and you don't have any like patterns.
Well, yeah, exactly. Goal clarification. You see, a lot of the goals that people are following, they're not consciously set. Okay, they might set the high level one, okay, but then the lower level ones are come about automatically as a result of the brain looking at what's called the causality matrix, okay, or the causality hierarchy, that this says if you want to achieve this, then this is what you must do. So like they've learned their whole life that the way you make money is you get a job, right? So they look in their bank account and they say, I don't have any money. I need some money. I want money. So that's the goal. So then how do you achieve it? You get a job. So that becomes their next lower level goal, is to get a job, right?
Yeah.
The reason they want to get a job is because they want money to pay their bills or whatever. They don't want to be kicked out onto the street, because it might be that their real goal is to avoid being on the street.
Yeah.
That's the thing they're afraid of. Right. So they do all these other things in order to achieve that. So not every goal is consciously decided. It's like it falls out of just knowing what the cause and effect is. Right.
Yeah.
So part of goal clarification and what actually a lot of psychological therapy could consist of is goal clarification, and making sure that goals are aligned, and that you're not trying to do something that is conflicting with some other goals, or that you're not trying to do something too difficult that actually you're finding quite hard.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I also like your analogy about scratching your face, right? Because basically it brings down to the table the concept of having hard-coded actions and hard-coded goals that are kind of, you're born with them, and a very shallow kind of goal hierarchy, right? Because you want to eat and blah blah blah, and then over time those low level ones get filled in with other things above it, so it brings it down further down the chain, so that you can actually starve for a while, right? Because if you want to eat, and what will happen is you can have other goals would actually push it further down, so that you actually don't you don't eat, like some people will have that pretty high up, so that will obviously impact their physiological aspect, because they'll be eating a lot, right? But if you add other goals into it, they will actually can start overriding those goals, which is quite interesting.
And you'll notice, like you or I, if we had a fly land on our face, we would immediately brush it off because we don't like that little tickly feeling of their legs as they're walking on us, right? And it's uncomfortable. But if you see people who are sitting like in Africa where flies are just a way of life,
Yep.
you see pictures of kids and everything just sitting there with flies on their face and they don't seem to be bothered by it. They just let them do it, right? And so obviously they have revised their goals. Maybe at first they didn't like it, but they were just tired of constantly doing this. And so now they've reset their goals to where they just let it be there. And so
you have other basic goals that are overriding. I watched this YouTube video of this reporter getting a fly in the mouth, and the guy doesn't even blink. He just keeps going. So he must have had some pretty serious goals to just keep talking about it. He just kept talking. Yeah. Well, if in middle of Australia here as well, people here also get the same way. Like you just get so. You go, I don't really care about flies anymore. But you're totally right. Yeah, I mean it's quite interesting, and those priorities really push down the kind of like low impulses, and you have
you might be able to relate to this where and probably there's other people who have hobbies and things or things that they do that they really love doing. I'm sure you're familiar with the thing where you're coding, you're writing some code, and you're really in the zone. You're like really pumping the code out, and you want to get something done. The time is going away. You don't want to take time away. You want to get this thing done. So even though your stomach is like growling at you to go eat, and even though your bladder is totally full, you don't get up. You don't get up to go and do anything. You just sit there and you continue. And finally, when you do get up, you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I sat there that long.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show that even those basic bodily needs and functions can be overridden when we are pursuing a goal that we consider more important.
Yeah.
See, it's not automatic. If people who talk about the hierarchy of needs, it really is the hierarchy of wants. Okay, because if you want something more than one of those basic hierarchical needs things, you will override it. Okay, and it's it happens all the time.
I think needs is like almost domestic animals have needs, right?
It's equating it to animalistic things, but we have the ability to override pretty much any of it.
Yeah, okay. We're unique. We're unique to all the other species.
People who fast for 40 days, obviously they totally resist the most powerful forces of hunger. Okay, so
Yeah, I totally agree. It's good. It's good.
Okay, so move on to the next one. Now, every goal has some attributes that are attached to it. And this is just an example of the types of things that can be attached to the goal. It's like, in order to achieve this goal, do I have the time to do it? Do I have the opportunity? Do I have the ability? Do I have the required material, the required funds, right? And what is the past success percentage, right? Like if I've tried it 100 times, how many times have I succeeded? Has it been 60, 70, 10? Okay, so I could keep track of a running average that actually tells me historically what is the chances of succeeding at this, assuming that all of these attributes are met. Now, if one of these items is not there, then that itself can set a sub goal, right? It's like if I don't have the funds to do this goal, then that can set a sub goal to get the funds, okay, to do this, or materials, okay, or the ability. I mean, a person can set a goal, or a machine can set a goal to become a doctor, right? That's my goal, to become a doctor. And then it looks and says, do I have the ability? No. Okay, so how do I get the ability? Go to medical school. That becomes a sub goal off of that one, right? And so building this hierarchy of goals is what drives the actions forward of an intelligent system. It's like at any given moment it's pursuing some goal, and it can switch off and then come back to a goal. So we can talk about that as far as goal management, okay, how that works. But yeah, in general, now the success probability is what drives emotions. What that success probability is of a goal, depending on what kind of goal it is, will generate emotion feelings in you to kind of help you know where you are on the particular goal that you're looking at. And you'll find as well that the emotions that are connected to a goal can be saved with that goal, because the goal is actually stored amongst, or the goal hierarchy or matrix is stored amongst all of your thoughts, right? So it's all connected, but it's associated with those thoughts. So if you wanted to become a doctor, but you couldn't, and you failed at that goal, right? And you set that goal aside and you moved on to other things, and let's say it created a real sadness in you to where you cried when you realized that you weren't going to get into medical school, and you remember that, right? Now, years later, somebody can remind you, can say, tell us about the time that you got rejected from medical school, and you go, and your brain goes back to that exact entry in your mind, and the emotion that was attached to it is actually loaded in, and you feel those feelings again, and you can actually cry again, even though it's years later and you've gotten well past it. So it's very interesting the way that whole thing works.
Yeah, and it's like in psychology, right? When they do, counseling, right? That usually what they try to do, right? Trying to find events that you had some undealt feelings in the past, right? And it means they dig up through the past, and images and things can remind you of things, and then you can feel the emotion real time. I think that's how.
Right.
So it's definitely is there, right? Because you can have a picture of something and it reminds you straight away. Like you can see a picture of your loved ones, even if they're alive or not alive, right? Fundamentally, you'll be like you'll have feelings straight away, right? You didn't have them at the time.
If you look at the picture, you probably won't. But if you cause the picture to cause you to go back and to picture the actual events that happened with those people, then you can feel the feelings that you felt at that time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is, I suppose, all the emotional people that have emotions. With you look at a picture of my son, I straight away, oh, I remember when that was taken. And you're like, oh, that was so nice. Like, yeah, there you go. There's my recall, instant recall. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's good. And another thing maybe also mentioned to it as well, that when you have like a hierarchy of goals, right, and you're like one goal away before you achieve the top level goal, right, and you have the success factor, and it's it's like, wow, it's pretty high, and you have a high success rate, and that not only that you have high success rate on this goal, but also that leads to the other goal being achieved, and that's happened. That would actually create even bigger emotions, like, wow, I'm always there. It's like when you play poker, right, and you have 99% chance of winning, and you have one thing, and you think, oh, I'm always one, right? So you have to get up really high, but then if you lose, it's a pretty low as well at the same time. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the higher up you go, the more powerful the emotion is.
Yeah, exactly. And
the higher up you go on the goal hierarchy, the more powerful the emotion is attached to it. Yep,
it's good as good.
Exactly. All right. So here's an example. I tried to construct an example that would be very simple, but would illustrate some actual tangible stuff that people could help them understand, in greater detail. Okay, so imagine you have 100 by 100 grid. Okay, so it's 100 by 100, so that means that it is 10,000 cells, right? Yeah, 10,000 cells. Okay. So now I didn't draw this to scale.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah, not to scale.
But
Just, yeah.
I showed one because it would be very small square if I did.
Yeah.
So so what you see there is that you've got the little square up in the upper right corner, and then that shows here that it's like it has the number 36 inside of it. Okay, and you can imagine every other cell filled with some other number. Okay, so a bunch of random numbers, low numbers, high numbers. Okay, and it's just randomly filled inside this grid. Okay, so what the goal is going to be, the high level goal, is to get all the numbers the same in each cell. Let's say it's going to be 27. Okay, that we want every cell to equal 27. But here's the trick. We can't just set it to 27. We have to get there by doing a combination of one of 4 actions. Okay, we can either add 5 or subtract 5, or add 1 and subtract 1. Okay, and so we want to be able to set each cell from whatever value it is to 27, and we can only do it by doing these 4 addition and subtraction operations: +5, -5, +1, -1. Okay, so if we now advance to the next slide, this is what a causality matrix would look like for a single cell. So I bypassed the higher level goals, which would be, change every cell to the same number. So the next goals down would be to pick a cell. You could start with the upper left one and just scan across each cell. And when you get to a cell, this is the causality matrix you would use in order to figure out how to adjust that cell so that it gets to equal 27. Okay, so what we've done here is, in order to genericize the actions, if you'll see on the right there, it says A equals target value, B equals current value, and then D, which stands for delta, equals B minus A. Okay, so the target value minus the current value. So in the case of the example of 36, then A would equal 36, B would equal 27, right? So then D would equal 36 minus 27, which would be 9. Right? So the D value would be 9 for that particular cell that was equal to 36. Now, what we see here on the causality matrix is we have on the far left, we have states. So here's the states that a cell can be in. Either the delta is greater than or equal to 5, and you see 4 examples of that, the first 4 rows, or delta is less than or equal to -5, or D is greater than 0, delta is greater than 0, or delta is less than 0, or delta is equal to 0. And if delta is equal to 0, that means that A and B are the same, which means you've reached your goal. So as we can see, the bottom one is dark green. All right, that actually represents hitting the goal, hitting the target. And you see the way that this causality matrix is actually formed is that it'll work for any numbers, right? So no matter what you set the current value to and the target value, this will still work. That's why we converted it to delta. So because it's actually the delta that we're looking to reduce, okay, from whatever it is to 0, right? So here's the important point to remember. The green items are the items that we need in order to create a goal matrix out of the causality matrix. So this is part of what the intelligence system does, is as you go through your life, you are taking in what causes what, right? That this state if you apply this action to it, it changes it to that state, right? If I want a job, then I need to make application. First, I need to find the job that I want to apply to. Then I need to make application, including the application and my CV. Then I'll be invited for an interview, maybe. Then at the interview, I need to answer all the questions correctly to their satisfaction. I might need to go through a second interview, and then I wait to hear whether I got the job. And then they'll either hire me or not, right? So that's like a step of the things that have to happen if you want to get a job. So that's what the causality matrix is actually recording, is this leads to that, right? This causes that. This prevents that. This enables that. That's what the causality matrix is actually showing you. So what we're saying here is that if you say A causes B, then if you have the goal of wanting to achieve B, then you can do A in order to do that. That's what the causality matrix does. It allows you to figure out what the goal should be, because it's telling you that this leads to that. So if you want that, then you must do this. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So the way we figure out a goal matrix is we look at a causality matrix and we go backwards from it. So that's why we start with D equals 0. That is our desired target. Then we look over here in the right-hand column of the states, and we pick out all of the items that have D equals 0 as possible states. Okay? And then those become our next level of goals. So we can follow all the way over and see that we've got the D is greater than or equal to 5, D is less than or equal to -5, which is the next green item. Then we have D is greater than 0 and D is less than 0. So those are the 4 possibilities of what can happen as the sub goals, okay, underneath. And then the actions are the ones that are associated with it. Like if the state is D greater than or equal to 5, the action is B minus 5. All right. And what will that lead us to? That will lead us to one of 3 states. Either it'll keep us to the same state of D is greater than or equal to 5, or it will lead us to one of the other states of D greater than 0, or it will lead us to the final state of D equals 0, which is our final example. Okay, so now if we take this and we show it as a goal matrix, then here we are. So what this is showing you is we removed all those other causality lines, okay, that were part of the causality matrix. And we've just isolated the goal matrix items. And this makes it clearer, because now you can see clearly that if we want to achieve the goal of D equals 0, then we look to see if D is greater than or equal to 5, then we subtract 5 from B, which is the current value. If it's less than or equal to -5, we add 5, right? And so on. So let's take our 36th example, okay? What we want is we want D equals 0. So we said it was 9. So 9 is greater than or equal to 5. That's true. So the action we need to do is subtract 5. So we subtract 5 from 9, and what do you get? You get 4, right? So now we look at the next goal on the same level. Is it greater than or equal to 5? Is 4 greater than or equal to 5? No. Is it less than or equal to -5? No. Is D greater than 0? Yes. So we subtract 1 from 4, okay, which is what we have there under B minus 1. So we subtract 1, we get 3. Then we do the same action again. We get 2, and then we get 1, and then we hit D equals 0, goal accomplished, okay? So it had to do several steps because those last ones are only by -1, right? Yeah. But if it was 100 away, then basically it could step towards the D equals 0 by 5s, right? So it would go 5 each time, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, until it gets less than 5, and then it goes 1, 1, 1, 1 until it reaches the target. I kind of liken it to when you fill the gas tank, and it's pumping away, and then that very last dollar, it slows down, and it actually goes very slow as
Yeah.
it's approaching the target, right? So that's
Or like
that's
some pumps,
general.
you just get sprayed with petrol because
Only if you go to a station that has, not very good pumps,
yeah,
right?
or overfill, and you're like, oh man, it happened to me before, especially
Yeah.
on a diesel. When you're filling, I got a diesel truck, right? When
Oh,
you
yeah.
fill that up, and you're on a high flow pump, it just goes, you better be
Yep.
watching, because if you're just distracted, it just sprays you with with
Yep.
diesel. Yeah, that's very good. I like this I am approach as well, because fundamentally, like if you look at causality matrix, right? You take it back to psychology, right? Some people can get so carried away with kind of options that they're not really going anywhere, right? So you can, because in causality everything is possible, right? So you can look at anything, right? So I suppose when you kind
Right.
of go through analysis and you actually look at goal matrix, it's much easier to sort out which things you need to really focus on, right? Because like
Yeah.
maybe
Well, what we've had to figure out is how can a computer system learn its own causalities,
hmm,
either by you telling it or it figuring it out itself just by logic, okay, and figuring things out by analyzing, okay. Like for example, d is greater than or equal to 5. It can say, okay, if I subtract 5 from b, then those are the possible states. But it could, just to be thorough, it could say, okay, what if we add 5 instead of subtract? It could just do that as a what if.
yeah,
And then it could even say, what if we multiply by 5? What if we divide it by 5? Right? And then it can figure out what the resulting states would be if it did that. And it can include all of that into the causality matrix.
hmm,
But uh, only the ones that would lead to d equals 0 as a potential state, would it add those in.
yeah,
Now, it may do another level of goals if it turns out, like you see how these greater than or equal to 5 and less than or equal to -5 have all 3 of the other states as potential states
yeah,
that it could go to,
yep,
right? So it doesn't need to add another level of goals. But if there was a state that you did an action and the resulting states do not include all the other states, then it may need to do another level
hmm,
of goals in order to try to achieve that, right?
yep,
So here we got lucky, or not lucky, but I intentionally made it so it didn't have a bunch of levels of goals.
yeah.
Okay, but
Well, because this is gonna, if you think about it in real life, it becomes exponentially more complicated, right?
well, yeah, it does,
The
but
content will be bigger.
yeah, but also our mind, and a synthetic intelligence mind, tries its best to
Hmm,
generalize
hmm,
things
yeah,
so that it's rules that are general instead of specific,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So like for example, to make money, you get a job. Well, getting a job is a very general thing. I mean,
yeah,
what kind of job? Where? In what field? I mean, there's a million jobs out there. You don't need to have a goal entry for each and every
yeah. Of
kind of
course, yeah,
job.
yeah,
You
yeah.
can have like a general job hunting routine,
Yeah.
right? That is general.
And then you
So,
weigh up all the jobs with the benefits. Maybe that'll have, yeah, and maybe
right,
not even all of them, right? If you think about it, you have a plumber or a Sparky, right? You might not know all the benefits, but you generally say, well, it's this kind of trade, right? So you generalize, because you're totally right. Your mind doesn't have all of the permutations and all the attributes for all the type of things. It just does generally. It goes, well, these things are the same, and it just does it
right.
like that. Yeah, yeah,
And another thing to point out is that here we have these alternate
yeah.
goals, okay, that can be done to solve d equals 0. Okay, so now what's interesting is that it may require one or more of these goals to achieve the higher level goal, right? And you don't really know how many or which ones until you look at the actual numbers involved, right?
Yep.
Now, you could also have one of these things could actually have a process, which would be like a stepwise list of goals that have to be followed in a certain order, right? And each one of them is a goal to achieve, right?
Yep.
See, anytime that we have something to do that is interacting with the world, that's a conditional thing. There's no guarantee that it can happen. So therefore, it's a goal. It's something. Yeah, you can tell yourself, "I will do this," but ultimately, you have things that can get in your way.
Oh,
You
yeah.
you have things that can happen.
Yeah.
You could take one step and die from a heart attack, and now you didn't do it. So
Yeah.
it's so that's why it's a goal. It's a goal because it's not guaranteed,
Yeah.
right?
So suppose that case is like when you and fundamentally as you get a goal and you figure out I can't do this, I have to get some money. Then to get some money, I have to get a skill, and then it can probably create a very long chain of goals you're trying to chase, and the ultimately saying where did I start, right? So you go, oh, actually, yeah. If it's obviously shallow, right? You have 4 or 5 levels, you can manage it. But when you starting to go 100 or so, eventually you might get lost. You might not know why was I doing these things.
Well, when it gets down to there, people do focus on the lower level, and they're not thinking about why are they ultimately doing this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the goal failing,
Yeah.
right, then their thoughts can go up the chain and actually realize that, hey, like what happens is they play it out in their mind. It's like, oh, I just lost my job and now the house payment is due and we're going to have the house repossessed and then we're going to have to go live with my mother and that's going to be horrendous and my wife's going to leave me. And, they go through this whole thing of what's going to happen as a result. And what they're actually doing is going through their goal hierarchy, okay, of all the things that they were trying to achieve that now aren't going to happen, okay, as a result of that.
Yep.
So
Yep. It's good. It's good. So
all right. So I guess that's this presentation. I'll go ahead and
Perfect.
stop sharing on this, okay?
Perfect. Let's do that.
Okay, here we go.
Yep. Very good. Great. Switches back to the good screen. All right, great. So, well, that's good. I like that, Ken. That was great. I suppose that's a good demonstration of causality and transition from causality to goals, because this draws a lot of parallels in the psychology, right? Because people do this quite a bit. So you're thinking about it in real life, right? So I think we already started talking about this, locking on a goal, right? So you get so fixated on a goal that you kind of forget other goals, right? So I suppose that's one kind of interesting concept to explore at some point.
Well, you don't really need to see that's the beauty of it is that you don't need to think about the higher level ones.
Yeah.
Once you've made that choice, remember that circle that shows goal selection.
Yep.
Once you've selected to go down a path, right?
Yep.
Then you can focus on that, because if you have to think about all that other stuff, it distracts you from getting that lower level one done. Now, once that's done, then you jump up to the higher level and one level up, and then you look at where you are. And if you say, oh, I've done this too, then you can move up to the higher level, and then that's when the excitement starts to build.
Yeah,
Okay?
exactly. Yeah.
The panic, depending on which one it's going to be.
Yeah, totally right. So, well, I suppose another things we talked about it before earlier is emotions, right? So the emotions, as we're going through this, right, they help to drive this, right? So I suppose, as you're getting closer, like I said, your emotions really driving you and making you do more things, right? I suppose sometimes it can maybe drive you astray as well, yeah, because you might be, getting so excited you forget some other goals on the way there, right? Which
and in general, you go through a series of emotions as you're working on a goal. So like when you first start off, there is, optimism that you're going to be able to do it.
Yep.
Or maybe not. Maybe when you first start off, you're like, oh man, I don't know how I'm going to get this done, but so it's actually depending on whether it's something you've done before or is a brand new thing. Like I remember when I took flying lessons, and the first time that I flew an airplane by myself with no instructor, okay,
Yeah.
there were thoughts that went through my mind, like, well, every other time, if I got in trouble, the instructor was there and he could, take over and address the issue. Now there's not going to be anybody in there. It's just me.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get this thought of, I got to be extra careful and do everything right, because more so than if he were there, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on what you're going to do, right? But then once I took off, and was climbing out, I was like, oh yeah, I got this. I've done this like many times before. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, also you get on the radio and you're talking and you have to say all the right phrases and everything. When the instructor's there, if you do something wrong, he'll correct you. But now if you do something wrong, it's like, what's going to happen then? I mean, is the tower going to correct me, or, how's this going to be handled?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So all of these things come into play. And, but then as you're doing it and you're feeling your way through it, you gain confidence and you say, this is good. But at any moment something could happen. And then you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? Okay. And, I did have a thing that I did that wasn't the smartest thing in the world.
When you were flying?
Yeah, this was when I was a kid, so I don't mind saying this, is that I
underage, doesn't matter, yeah.
I thought, I saw some clouds and I thought, oh, it'd be so much fun to go above those clouds, I wasn't supposed to do that, okay? And the clouds were much higher than I thought. So I go climbing up into those clouds, totally stupid. An airplane could have been flying right through those clouds, okay? And, I wasn't cleared for being in clouds.
Yeah.
And so then I realized my mistake. So I turned around and came back down. And when I came out from the clouds underneath, I'm looking around and I didn't know where I was. Somehow I had drifted to a place I didn't recognize any of the ground, land or anything of this sort. There was all kinds of highways and everything.
Wow.
So I thought about, calling the tower, because that was one way to solve the problem.
Yeah.
But then
Daddy,
I realized,
help. Yeah.
But then I realized, oh, they'll probably chastise me. So I decided to try to fix the problem myself. So then I thought logically. I said, okay, I know all of these highways down there go north and south and east and west. So I looked at where the sun was and I figured out, okay, I'm going to follow this highway until it gets to another highway. And then I'll use that, and I'm going to keep doing that until I see something that looks familiar. And I did. I eventually saw where the airport was, and then I said, approach and all that, and nobody knew. So
that's amazing. Just a little story. I think it's quite cool, because you basically covered some of the topics that are common to that. Yeah. So competing goals, right? So you had you're flying, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna. Curiosity taking over, so that's competing to the current goal, stay safe, and I'm just gonna, because and the wisdom wasn't there, I'll just go and do it. Then you talked about goal conflict, right? When you were like, do I call someone, or it conflicts with my being embarrassed and being chastised, and then you went for goal avoidance, right? I don't want that. And then you went to the alternative goals, right? When you actually went, hey, I'm just gonna now figure this out on my own, right? So
that became the goal. See, none of my high level goals in life mattered. The only thing I cared about was find that airport. Okay. Yeah. I need to find where it is. So that's why it's actually good that we can focus down on a lower level thing. I mean, if you look at why I wanted to find the airport, you could document a whole hierarchy of goals that I was looking to fulfill.
Yeah, exactly. And
a whole lot of troubles that I was looking to avoid. Okay. Type of thing.
Yeah, and this would have been all part of kind of the goal, the conscious. He would have been making these microsecond decisions, right? Oh, I'm not doing that, I'm going to do this, yeah. Yeah, and it would
Right.
have been all. So maybe another cool thing to be able to maybe even mention shortly, because we're already up to an hour. Time flies when you're having fun, by the way.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, I just looked at the time. I was like, wow, wow, look at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
So the concept of we talked about it a while back. Gut and heart, right? So when you have these emotions that kind of help you to decide on the goals, where you're like, I'm gonna go with this one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I believe is the brain calculating the odds,
Mm.
looking at the alternatives, and actually, chemically telling you which is the right way to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and sometimes I sort of think that there's some assistance that comes from some source somewhere. Okay. I don't want to necessarily promote my personal views here, but let's just say that sometimes you feel like you get a nudge in the right way,
Yeah. Yeah.
and whether it comes just from you or from some external source, different people have different views on that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
respect everybody's views. I
Yeah. Yeah.
myself do feel that I've been helped at times. So
Yeah. I think it definitely. I mean, I'm always interested also to know like some of these things could be even happening. Like your brain is almost automatically doing calculations for you on things, right? Because if you have
yep,
conscious goals where you're actually going, oh, I'm gonna avoid some stuff here, right? You know what's gonna happen, right? But almost like gut and feel just comes out. Like those
yep.
things where people say gut and feel, they were just doing something, and then the right answer was there, but they didn't actually want conscious. Yeah, so that's definitely something obviously relating either past experience or additional kind of connecting points or something, other information coming
Yeah.
to you, giving you
But
that
when
ability.
speaking about synthetic intelligence, which we got to remember that's what we're talking about, right?
Oh yeah,
Is that probably any kind of external input, uh, unless it's coming through a socket,
yeah, yeah,
through a web socket, is probably not going to be there,
yeah.
okay? Because whatever makes us biological,
Mhm.
um, something more than a biological machine, I don't think the synthetic intelligence will have that. But
Yeah, well, of course, yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
doesn't mean that it still can't fundamentally process
Hmm.
goals and achieving those goals. I think we demonstrated here
Yeah,
that if you could just extrapolate the example that I gave, and where it says like D is greater than or equal to 5,
yeah,
that's like a sentence like Bob is a doctor.
yeah, exactly.
That's the same thing, right? It's just doctor is just a state, just
Yeah,
like 5 is a state,
yeah.
right? And so it you can apply these principles to any kind of situation, okay, in the world.
I agree, and I think the whole point of synthetic intelligence, you would actually have goals to be more conscious, right? Because you can do more things consciously, right? Because we obviously limited at some point with our unconscious ability to process a vast amount of things, right? But with synthetic intelligence, it's less so, right? So you can actually have that kind of
Well, with
opportunity.
synthetic intelligence, we can remove the limits
Yeah,
that the brain would have.
yeah,
So, in other words, we could set up a goal hierarchy that has 10,000 levels of goals.
yeah,
Okay, um, I don't think a human can do that.
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah. I mean, some people have
I
troubles
don't think
with
I
just
don't think.
eating, sleeping. There's five or
Yeah, I'm
so.
talking about levels.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's like the levels of complexity can become very vast
Yeah,
because there's no practical limit that we need to put. I
yeah,
think our brain, most people's brains, for example, can't remember a sequence of things more than 20 things,
yeah,
maybe. If you use certain mental tricks, you can go longer, but I still think we would struggle to process a million things in a list.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
whereas a synthetic intelligence system can breeze through a million things, in a very short amount of time. So,
Yep, totally agree.
yeah.
All right then. Well, we're. I think that's good. Well, maybe we should leave it at that. Ken.
All right, yeah,
Yeah.
I think we've covered this well.
Yep. Think so. It's great. Yeah. So once again, everyone, if you're watching this post stream, please let us know your comments. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn. You can leave comments on the video, and we'll get back to you.
All right.
See you
Thanks,
next
Mac.
time. Thank you again.
Thank you.
See you next time,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.